Ladies and gentlemen, on YouTube I have a playlist called Beyond the Notes. In that playlist you find videos in which we together dive into pieces of music and try to understand the language of music. Why is it that music has such a powerful language that directly actually speaks to our hearts and skips the brain? We don't need words, but it's sometimes a mystery to know, really to put your finger there, to understand what is it that makes music so effective. And many of you, I know from the comments, enjoy these videos because it helps clarify, often also from me when I make these videos for you, what is really in the music, or one way of looking at it, because you have a multitude of ways, of course. Today I will take you to a beautiful, mind-blowing Adagio by Mozart. It's a sonata, it's an Adagio that he wrote in the context of a sonata, his sixth so-called Munich sonata, the last of the row of the sonatas that he wrote or presented in Munich when he was there very young, 1775, to actually direct an opera that he was commissioned by some people there for Carnival. This sonata, the D major, is the final piece of those six, and it is a mind-blowing piece. All six are actually incredible. I just recorded them for the Mozart project, by the way. So that will be announced in October or November. 2 boxes or 7 or 8 CDs, I'm not sure. You will read everything. You can, if you want, subscribe to the newsletter. There's a link in the description, and then you will be informed on that. But this sixth sonata is very special because Mozart there, he wrote this in Munich, not as a preparation. Probably, that's speculation, he was influenced by the incredible musicians there, Munich, Mannheim, those were the cities of the time. There were incredible musicians, and probably he felt challenged. This sonata, to give you just an example, is 23 pages long in this Neue Mozart-Ausgabe. That's double the length of the previous one. So Mozart really showcased everything he had, and this piece is just amazing. And within that piece, so you have a normal kind of opening allegro movement, then you have kind of not typical rondo polonaise, and as a third movement you have a very long variation series, and in that variation series you find this Adagio as number 11 of the variations, and that's the piece we're going to talk about. Now I'm just going to play a few bars for those of you who do not know the piece, and then we're going to talk about this, because here I just told you Mozart was commissioned to write an opera. Well, this is an opera on its own. It's unbelievable. Let's just play a few bars. My clavichord is still cold, so to say. I just activated my camera, so you will hear me practice here with just no preparation. But that's what makes these videos so authentic, I would say. What's in the name, right? So the tempo I take is from Czerny. For those of you who are longer here, the entire Mozart project, of course, is also, is revolving around metronome marks and the historical meaning of that. And so we take as much as possible, because we don't have metronome marks for all of Mozart's works, but for the sonatas we have, as much as possible, tempos given by people that are very close to Mozart. Mozart never gave metronome marks because, for the simple reason, it didn't exist. And so here we have a metronome mark, which is very interesting. I'm going to talk about that in the video, but not now, of 108th note, which is the back and forth of the metronome, and that means that every 16th note gets the duration of that 100, which is a beautiful tempo, by the way. Karl Czerny. So that's a tempo. Let me just play a few bars for you. So what do we hear in this piece. The atmosphere up from the start is like very, it's not very, it's expressive, but expressive in an introvert way, if that's even possible. You have clearly like a soprano voice, like she's taking the whole stage, and there's a very simple or harmony accompaniment. It's not so much. If you just analyze the harmony here, and it might not be perceptible at first, but it's so simple. You have D major, 6th grade, 4th in reverse, 2nd actually, and then 5. Again, again. Harmonically speaking, this is not something that we should applaud Mozart for and say like, what a genius. It's just so simple. The genius element, of course, is in what he does with this simple harmony. And all the focus here is on the melody. And there the melody has a very special form. This is a heavily ornamented, elaborated piece, which is the expression here of this piece is mainly in the ornamentation. And of course in the combination with the simple harmony, Mozart is using those elements. So if I play the first bars again, and I leave out a lot of the notes, then we would get like a piece like this. Something like that. Something like that, but it's very simple, and you would say like, okay, still you have this same atmosphere because the harmony is so simple and that works, but there is not so much expression. Just at the beginning, he adds this very slow run of notes. And the tempo, I mean, we're not talking about tempo primarily here, but the tempo works. I always said like, changing the tempo changes everything, but that's so true. If you play this much faster, then these notes become... It's a completely different piece, and by the way, here you run into a dead end because you have, as we will see, even 128 notes. I actually had to count. It's not 32nd, it's not 64, it's even the double of that. So you run into problems which are unsolvable if you take a double tempo. But these long notes at the beginning, some people might be afraid of playing those very long, but it's like, imagine also you have the entire sonata before this, and suddenly you have this piece, this moment of rest, like, what's happening? And he doesn't do this, he does this. It's very effective, you see, yeah? We will see also when he repeats this later, how he is actually elaborating on the elaboration. It's unbelievable. Here, soltanto. And what you can do as a player also is like give these notes a little too late, whatever. I mean, you don't need to be very strict on the time. You can add a little flavor of expression. While the left hand just keeps the tempo. Don't exaggerate, I would say. So we have that, then we continue again, elaboration like exclamation mark, octave. Very opera-like, eh? Beautiful. F sharp with G. Expression. This is a piece where I am jokingly saying to Alberto, you know, Alberto is working on the Beethoven works, and Beethoven, of course, it's much more, well, it's not much more this, it's like Beethoven is a little bit more structured in its notation. It's already paving the way to the 19th century, like the score has everything you need to do. But this is like, Alberto is a very strict, rigid player. Like he plays really as I think was a habit in those early 19th century days, which is very strict in time. So, and he also plays strict in time, but then the liberty of the right hand, which he as an Italian should actually have in his blood, but he's, as I make jokingly, with all respect for German players, he's like more like a German strict player, which of course has a tradition going back to, probably very early 19th century, and it's like, just that score and I play everything, do the right accents. But here, you have to do a little bit more, because the music invites you to do that, while the left hand is actually staying in tempo. It's like yaram taram. It's like you have to have this little bit of pathos there, but it's just a little bit of salt and pepper that you add here. Okay, let's continue. So we come here to the first conclusion. Calando, one of the first moments where you read of you see in Mozart's work like a kind of tenuto. And then here, imagine Mozart did this. But he doesn't do that. He adds this tension and then this B makes an incredibly big difference. Again, without. Beautiful. Always these chords in the first inversion, so the F sharp is in the bass, work very well. They're very suggestive, so to say. But adding this B, it's so simple and yet it's so effective. That's typically Mozart. And then a little bit of drama. Pianissimo. Forte, piano, forte, piano. Also here this crescendo. Piano as a first big conclusion. And so very, very strange also this it's like still this Empfindsamkeit, like the style, a little bit of kind of Emmanuel Bach, where you have these big contrasts. Mozart of course was influenced by that. So a full spotlight to the melody. The harmony is really in function of like the soprano voice. There is nothing else, yet it's so simple that it's very effective. And Mozart, this combination with the ornamentation makes this piece really special. But we're not at the end. I just started. So we have had the beginning. The beginning is returning, so the opening. But Mozart is not repeating it in the same way. He is making another layer of ornamentation, and it's unbelievable. So I just play you maybe bar by bar, and we make the comparison. So the opening, the original here, opening is like this, as we've played just a few minutes ago. Now it's just like this. And then so instead of this, we have this. And instead of this, original here, we have this. Drill. And then here, talking about tempo, originally we have this. Now we have on these on these 30-second notes, we have actually trills. You need just time to do that. And then instead of just, we have that is so typically Mozart. But I have to tell you, if you want to do some ornamentation yourself, and in the Mozart project, in the recording project, I'm very reluctant to do so. I'm adding sometimes a little bit, not much, especially in the sonatas where I decided to have all the repeats, as was probably customary in those days. They played also the second repeat of a sonata, which we oftentimes just omit these days because it gets too long. And you feel sometimes that the piece is actually like shaped to have a little bit more ornamentation, but I'm still very modest in that. Also because it's a job. It's like also you have people that are very good at it, very creative. It's also something you need to want to do. But I feel like this kind of ornamentation, nobody is able to add that. And even if you were, you're changing the piece completely because you're setting the piece in a completely different direction, which is obviously what Mozart wants to do here, but it's hard to repeat. It's hard to compete with as well. I mean, this is like unbelievable ornamentation. Just again. So we come from, if I just play again without ornamentation. Maybe this. Of course, you would have a little bit more notes than that. You wouldn't have this melody. Agreed. But you get the point. You have adagios by Mozart that are actually very sober in ornamentation. And then the question is like, do you add something like that? But then, like, so inventive. Like this trill. It's not just a trill, it adds to the emotion, so to say, to this flavor of like what this music makes the music that it is. Without being superficial, it's not just a trill for a trill, to just like, hey, and these are not just the notes. You see how fast I can play? Or sing. No, these notes, they have a purpose. And then this. To arrive here at the F sharp in a way that is like, whew, we're there, you know. And then and he adds something else. So there is so much in this little time frame of one bar that the listener is like following this story, and the emotion is in these ornaments. And that's so crazy that you can do that apparently so easily. It's like I have no idea if he struggled finding these notes. Probably he worked on that as well. It's not because he was over talented that he could just everything do like nothing. Of course he had to work here, but then you come with something that fulfills this purpose of the narrative of the piece so well. Again, it is so beautiful. And then the clavichord. Guys, if you hear people say like, Mozart on the clavichord, I mean, listen to what I can do on this high E. I can do that, ya, pop, pop. There is no doubt that this piece was written with the clavichord in mind. The language is so one-to-one to what you can do here. Anyways, then we continue, and here comes a little bit of drama. Again, we had this chord progression, and we go just to A major. It's very simple, but since this piece is harmonically so simple, so to say, everything you do, everything you change, like going from F sharp or D major, not to D minor, but you change the F sharp, you replace it by an F, just as a transition note to go to the dominant E major, 7th of E major. Makes it so effective. So And we had this passage before. I can play it for you, and then let's see what Mozart is doing now, because this is even one step further than what we just had. So originally it was like this. Big jump. Oh, sorry, I'm playing the wrong ornamentation. There are two staves here, two lines. That's the manuscript, and there's the first print. And I will play, of course, the first print because that's more elaborated. There is nothing wrong with this because it's very effective. When he goes here to this pianissimo note, which is of course also an indication that it was meant for clavichord. But anyways, not want to have the discussion, there were pianos at the time, but I mean, Mozart didn't have one. But see, you don't need more than this. That's so rich. Mozart is now taking the same melody or the same principal notes and the same harmony, and he is actually going from there. And now I have to be careful to read the right lines because also the manuscript already was very ornamented, but the first print went over that. So we go here from here. I mean, wow, why? These trills. Articulation is, by the way, indicated by him. I mean, if you wonder sometimes, and let me take my other glasses because I don't know how long we are in the video right now. If you would take this piece only, and he presented himself in Munich in this way with this piece. I mean, no wonder he didn't get the job. He was always wondering, like, the world doesn't need me, right? I mean, you have there a bunch of musicians, and this is just speculation, but I just see that in front of my eyes like this. You have this piece, you have this young man presenting that, probably with this kind of naive arrogance. I don't know. It's just how I, like, not meant, but like being so good and and not knowing maybe that you're so much better. I mean, this is blowing all the competition out of the park, you know. And then after this, like this explosion of fast notes, you have a contrast. You go back to the long notes of the beginning. Question mark. Nothing else. And sometimes musicians, and they have a tendency to be like a little bit afraid of pauses and long notes, but you have to see everything in the context. The audience really loves that if you make the timing right. So if you arrive here like very, very like agitated, so to say, with the trills, and you are. And you have a complete page of like 30-second notes with trills and then octave jumps and whatever, and then suddenly it's beautiful. Don't rush. Take your time. Just play in time, actually. And he makes beautiful use of the register of the high, which is difficult for instruments of that time. So here you have the entire scene, of course, to the soprano, of course. Still, there is nothing changed. There's a story. What is the story? Well, you can fill that story in. We didn't talk about it yet, but that's very personal. You can say like Mozart at that age in Munich, he was writing also the seventh sonata. He did that in Munich or from Mannheim. I don't know. I mean, it's like all speculation, but it's a young guy. He was also looking for someone for the rest of his life. So he could be very well in love or just whatever. Mozart in that time, he was in love with everybody. If you read his letters and a little bit dive into his biography. So this could be like very well like the adoration of a girl or whatever. Or you could say it's a little bit like if this was a Schumann piece that Schumann wrote for children or about children, then you would have a title like the Traumerei maybe, and maybe a little bit more spicy. It's not really the dream world, but it's like a child that's very innocently looking at the world. And with children you have the same thing as with young men in love, I would say, like everything is big. Every emotion, every feeling, everything is like super important. And that's here as well. This drama is actually like a kind of, yeah, illustration of that. And then you come here in this very shift of mood. And when you have these pieces, or you had this ending, again, and actually I'm not playing it right, so yes, forzando, forte, piano, forte. So we are here forte, and then everything is like empty. There is no accompaniment anymore. So this octave jump, I have to say, like, it took me a while to understand that, and once I made a connection with the opera, it became all clear. Of course, the keyboard instrument has not the ability to connect this note, this A to the high A. You have to suggest that. You cannot just play, then it's very dry. This energy needs to be there, and you do that by the time, by giving that note a little bit too late, the high note, but it's like the clear expression, and you could say like a clear expression in like expressiveness. I know it doesn't make any sense what I'm saying right now, but I get that you get my point. Why is Mozart using so much ornamentation? And here he could like go chromatically to the high note or whatever, to the high note, and he doesn't. He just brings it back to a kind of naked situation. Not wanting to suggest anything to young Mozart, but I mean that's you get my point. So suddenly everything falls like very sober. It's like this is what it is about. You go down on yourself, and then this outburst of emotion. Just one note, that's it. That's unbelievable. I mean, you could say like, in terms of music and music composition, just seeing isolated here, it's nothing. What's that? But in the context of it all, in that narrative, in that story that Mozart is telling here, it's unbelievable. That might be very well a symbolic moment for his life at that moment. He was searching it. And then he goes back to the beginning. So you get it for the third time. Again, a little bit less ornamented. I just want to have one place with you discussed, and maybe even two. But this one I really want to share with you, because here again you have an ornamentation now on this moment. So this moment where Mozart makes this contrast from a lot of elaborated notes, fast notes to nothing. And that comes back, but then he's elaborating even more. And of course that changes the music. It's the same, a little bit, but then. So you have this line, this chromatic line, and then you have originally like this. Now. Beautiful D sharp. Huh? Octave down. And now, a moment. Again, very introvert, very low, huh? This is low A. And then you have 128 notes, and you should play them in time. So you have, in the recording, like, I had to work, and I'm probably not able to play it like it should be, because that's like the fastest you can play on the clavichord here. You can take more time, which people do, and to add like an eighth note or even more, like to pretend that there is a fermata there, and then to take the listener out of any proportion of feeling of time. But I don't think that's meant like that. And in the style of that time, these notes, they were the showcases for virtuosity, and that brings you in this tempo, which is a whole beat tempo, to the edge of what's possible. So much faster you cannot play on the clavichord. I mean, maybe some people, I don't know, I don't care even, but it's like, it's obvious that this is, you cannot play that in double the tempo, right? But then the final point, the final moment I want to share with you is also, this is a beautiful clavichord. I mean, it's of course because, I'm saying that because it's my own instrument, and I'm saying it in the second place also because it is a beautiful instrument. The treble here, very close by the way to an instrument that Mozart himself had. The treble here, and Potvliegen is known for that. It's so hard for instrument makers to make this part of the instrument sound open and long, like with a sustained note, because the strings are very short and the energy that you can put in the instrument is very little, in fact. But we can imagine that Mozart had a beautiful instrument as well, and he is making use of this so much here. And the moment, the way he's doing that is actually, it's really unbelievable. So we're still in the same. You could did this again, the repeat of the original theme, elaborated. So it's this, and the moment where he goes to the sixth grade. But listen to what he's doing here. So you come here from this 128 notes or whatever. Forte. And now. For me, this is one of the most beautiful Mozart places. I mean, it's so simple and you cannot get your mind around, like, why is it so effective? And then you have a very simple minuet, so to say, and then the piece is over. I mean, that's like, he just wanted to compose something to, and you see that often, like when you have these very emotional pieces in their time, Beethoven does it all the time, then there is something to just erase that feeling a little bit. It's like, it was a little bit too much. People in that time, in those days, and even mid-19th century, you can read Berlioz's memoirs. I highly recommend that. That's a beautiful English translation for those of you who don't read French. And I read the English translation myself. It's not so expensive, a beautiful little edition. And there he still talks about like how people in a concert just stand up and embrace each other crying, like tears running over their cheeks. I mean, that's something we cannot imagine anymore. But these deep feelings, so you read also letters and stories of you could not send people home. This was not a concert piece, but it was a practice with that emotion. You had to erase that. You had to really give them possibilities to breathe. We have to keep that in mind. Emotionally, we lost, like, I think, a lot of that. Still, it's here, but it's not in our expression anymore. But this place, that almost makes you cry. Yeah, that was it. I mean, this piece is unbelievable, and that's just the Adagio in the framework of like a huge sonata. It is a very challenging piece, but it's worth all of your time. So yeah, especially the Adagio. And the great thing about this whole beat tempo is that you finally can play it, because I guess I didn't check, but I guess it's played much faster often, and then it becomes inaccessible to many of you. I know that. I mean, that's not a shame, that's just what it is. And I see that the sun is actually shining, and so I will be overlit, but I have no idea. It's about the music, right? So let me know in the comments what you think about this Adagio. I'm really looking forward to that as always, and also give suggestions for other pieces, other formats of the videos that we make, and I'm more than happy to do that. As for now, I'm still working a lot on the book. I'm recording this the 2nd of February. The end of February is my absolute deadline to finish the manuscript with the examples, illustrations and everything. And so that takes a lot of my time. After that, we will see what we can do. Maybe a little bit more videos like this, work on the membership, like the educational platform that I really would like to make, where I put all of this in like a very structured, organized way, and help you also practice, learn, start new pieces, and guide you through a learning process, because I know many of you would be it could be very helpful to many of you. That's what I wanted to say. And finally, a big thank you to my Patreons. Check it out. There is a link in the description box. My patrons, they make sure that I can continue everything I do, and also making these videos for you. So I would be very much appreciated if you check it out. There's an awesome community. We have a lot of content there, and basically you support all the projects that we are doing here. Thank you for that. That's all I've got for you today. Thank you for watching. We see each other very soon again. Bye.